Guys, welcome back to Ancestors and Alcohol. I'm Bree, if you don't already know. So today I have another Ancestry video for you, and I will be talking about my maternal grandfather, and his name is Roscoe. He is my mother's father. My last video I did my maternal grandmother, and if you're just tuning in, this is your first video watching, I'm going through my whole lineage of everybody that I have found. Also, I'm super excited because I got my Ancestry kit, so I'll be spitting in this tube and sending it off very, very soon. Super excited to see what relatives that I meet and maybe what I find out. So, without further ado, let's get started. So this was the first time that I really had to do some research on. My grandfather died in 1965 when my mom was a child, so I never got to meet him. And my mom really didn't grow up with that side of her family, being that he died at such a young age. And asking questions growing up, I was kind of interested, but it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. He wasn't there, and my mom talked about him, but it wasn't tangible for me. Like, I couldn't see him like I could see my other grandparents. So I figured that he was from New York because that's where my mother is from, and all the stories that I heard was about him living in Harlem and everything. But once again, I was wrong, and once again, that's why I say make sure that you ask some questions. So I decided, all right, let me go to the source. So I asked my grandmother questions and I asked my mother questions, and all the information that they gave me, I gathered it, and I went on Family Search and I put in his information, and I went through all the census records, marriage records, birth certificates, death certificates, any records that I could find that lined up with what my mother and my grandmother told me. Let's jump into a little bit about my grandfather Roscoe. So my grandfather Roscoe was born in February of 1902 in Currituck, North Carolina. And for those of you that don't know, Currituck is a small town and it's on the coast of North Carolina. It's not far away from Virginia at all. And my grandfather was one of 9 kids, and basically I had to plug in the information and work my way through each census. The census only comes out every 10 years, so yes, you are going to have gaps. And so I started with the 1900 census in 1910, 1920, and just worked my way all the way up until the last census that is released, which is 1940 census. So according to the 1920 census, my grandfather was 18 and he was still living at home with his parents, and he was a foreman on the farm. I'm guessing that he lived at home and he just helped his parents out because he was one of the oldest kids that they had. And that's honestly what a lot of blacks did back then. You lived at home with your parents and you helped them out. We didn't have a lot. We were still, trying to get ourselves together after slavery and during the Reconstruction era. So you did what you had to do for your family. Moving on, 10 years later, in the 1930 census, he had moved away from home. He was living in Elizabeth City, which Elizabeth City from Currituck today is about a 27-minute drive between the two cities. So not too far away from home, but give you a little space. And he was 29 years old. He was a farmer. He was married, and he had his first child, Ophelia, which would be my aunt, but she has passed away. And then I keep going on up, and in the 1940 census, he had moved to New York, Harlem to be exact, and was working at the Cotton Club as a waiter. He was divorced, and by this time he had another daughter, which would be my Aunt Bernice, who also has passed away. And I was super excited to find out that he was working at the Cotton Club, because when I think Cotton Club, I think of like the Harlem Renaissance. I'm thinking of all the movers and shakers in Harlem. My grandmother also let me know that my grandfather was a construction worker. He was really good with his hands. He also did chauffeuring for the times when construction wasn't going that well, or if he wasn't working at the Cotton Club anymore, And my favorite job that he had of all, this was like his side hustle. My grandfather was a hustler. He was a liquor bootlegger. So he would make the alcohol and then he would sell it. And that was just so interesting to me to know that during that time, he was selling liquor out of his house. Like, it was just so cool to me. But that's what he did. He provided for his family. He was a black man in New York in the 1940s, and he had to do what he had to do. My grandmother and my grandfather met around 1950, and then my mother was born soon after that. Unfortunately, my grandfather did pass away in 1965. He had pneumonia, and he died in the Harlem hospital. I was told that his funeral was huge. There were a lot of people there, being that he knew so many people in Harlem. My mother and my grandmother told me he was super nice, super friendly. He had a lot of friends. Everybody knew Roscoe, basically. One of the stories that my mom told me about him was when Halloween came around, she would go with my grandfather and he would take her around to all the restaurants, the stores, even some bars. And instead of my mom getting candy, she would get money. She would get like $10, $20. And I was just like, I wish I knew my grandfather. But he was super nice and super sweet, and I wish that I could have met him. But the good thing about having to do all that research is I found another part of my family. Being that my grandfather had it was 9 of them. He had siblings, and they had children, and their children had children. So I've been able to find some of like my 3rd and 4th cousins and talk to them and ask them about their grandparents, their great-grandparents, and just trying to keep plugging everything in. So that was something I was really excited about. And some of those family members I still keep in touch with. I talk to them every single day. It's just like a sense of, okay, these are my family members. We share the same ancestors. And it's just super exciting. So I hope that you guys are researching. I'm inspiring people to find their lineage, and soon I'll be doing videos about the census records, birth records, death records, ways that you can find your ancestors if your elders are not alive or if your parents don't know anything. So goodbye, beautiful black people. I hope this was very, very helpful. Make sure you subscribe, please. Bye.